Ladies and gentlemen, welcome everyone. My name is Dalia Abulfotuh. I'm an economist at the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization in the regional office in Cairo. First slide, please. I would like to welcome you to the 6th webinar as part of our series under the Arab Social Protection Compass towards integrated approach for universal social protection with the support of the International Social Security Association. Next slide, please. Today's session will focus on extending social insurance for agricultural workers in the MENA. As you know, the agricultural workers, seasonal workers, and fishermen usually work in the informal sector without any insurance or regular salaries. Under this framework, the FAO has cooperated with the International Labour Organization to establish a policy incubator to enhance social insurance for agricultural workers. Today, we will be sharing the lessons learned and some successful experiences as part of this initiative. Next slide. I would like to remind you that this session is being recorded. The recording will be available online on the socialprotection.org webpage. We also have simultaneous interpretation available in both English and Arabic. Next slide, please. This webinar will last for 1 hour and a half. We will start with the introduction by Mrs. Leah Khater and Mrs. Shea McClanahan. Then we will be listening to an introduction by Mr. Mehdi on the challenges faced by agricultural workers, in particular in accessing social insurance. We will also listen to a summary of the efforts made so far. We will move into a discussion session with Mr. Mohamed Azhar, Mrs. Nabi, who will be sharing their experiences from Morocco and Tunisia. Mr. Mohamed, Mr. Mounir, and Mrs. Neda will be the discussants for today. You can also ask your questions in the chat on Zoom. We have a chat and a questions and answers possibility. And finally, we will be listening to the closing remarks delivered by Mr. Omar Benammour. Next slide. I would like to give the floor now to Mrs. Leah Khater, Social Protection Technical Officer at the International Labour Organization Regional Office for Arab States. The floor is yours, Leah. Thank you very much, Dalia. We would like to welcome you again. Thank you for responding to the invitation and for attending this webinar as part of the Arab Social Protection Compass. We hope that this meeting will be valuable and enriching for all of you. Social protection systems play an important role in addressing poverty and inequality for workers in the agricultural sector. This is given to the large number of poor people working in this sector. This is in addition to the dangerous and uncertain nature of agricultural labor and the effects of climate change. Workers in this sector often face health, economic challenges in addition to social and environmental challenges compared to other workers. At the same time, workers in the agricultural sectors are often excluded from social protection, such as maternity benefits, health, work injury, and different other similar benefits. There is a lot of differences, and these are main barriers. We are talking about the most vulnerable category, which at the same time, one of the categories receiving the lesser benefits and social insurance. Today's meeting will be divided into two parts. First, we'll be discussing the challenges relevant to the Arab world. And second, We will be acquiring knowledge pertaining to some regional experiences related to insurance provided for agricultural workers. This includes the experiences of Tunisia and Morocco. Between brackets, I would also like to add that the International Labour Organization, along with the FAO, are also cooperating to create an incubator to provide skills for professionals and thus ensure better social insurance in the region. This is an initiative that shares experiences and skills between officials to ensure that agricultural workers are covered. We would kindly encourage you to join this initiative, and we will be explaining more details later on. How can we counter challenges related to universal social protection to also include agricultural workers? This is the question that will be raised today, and we hope that the discussions will help us answer it. In the Arab world specifically, there are many challenges and barriers preventing these workers from accessing social insurance. Amongst the most important barriers, exclusion from legal frameworks, financial constraints. As an example, seasonal work, daily work, and the lack of a legal contractual framework are considered amongst the main legal barriers that prevent these workers from accessing social insurance. The low income received is also another factor. These are also different types of challenges faced by agricultural workers, especially in the informal sector. This means that these risks and instability would limit their possibility and their ability to pay contributions. There are challenges also to convince employers to cover their contributions for the insurance provided to workers. These legal and financial constraints are also coupled with other administrative frameworks and challenges. My colleague Shea McClanahan will be focusing on this issue, in particular from the experience of the International Social Security Association. Shea, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. On behalf of the ISSA, we're very pleased to welcome everyone joining us today for the webinar, especially a warm welcome for our distinguished speakers. And I want to extend a particular thanks to those from the ISSA member institutions who throughout this series have shared your firsthand knowledge of reforms that are going on in your own countries, but also your curiosity about reforms that are happening elsewhere in the region. So welcome to all of you. Today's focus on reaching agricultural workers is a chance to really spotlight these workers who, for a variety of reasons that Leah has explained and we'll hear more about, they've often been overlooked in the social security policy and legal frameworks in the region. So I think it's a really important opportunity to be jointly offering this space with the ILO and today with the FAO to reflect on those particular challenges surrounding coverage extension to rural sectors, but especially in the context of the growing risks related to climate change. So this is a really important opportunity. For agricultural workers in the region, as Leah mentioned, legal exclusions are probably one of the biggest barriers to coverage in many countries, and they're not to be underestimated. But even when those legal barriers are lifted, actually turning that right to Social Security into reality for people working in agricultural jobs is far from straightforward. These workers face high administrative barriers to coverage due to remote locations, complex administrative procedures, lack of awareness, challenges with enforcement, and so on. Many are also self-employed, which brings its own set of challenges that are then exacerbated by some of the sector-specific barriers. So making progress in reaching agricultural workers, it really does require a lot of determination, a lot of dedication, and indeed creativity on the part of administrators. So among our speakers, we're really pleased to be hearing from the CNSS, the National Social Security Fund in Morocco, who is an institution that's working on the front lines of coverage extension to these workers. So without further ado, back to you, Dalia, to get straight to it and to get us started. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mrs. Shea. Mrs. Shea is a senior expert at the International Social Security Association. Thank you very much for your introductions. We will move now to the presentation. It's a 10-minute presentation presented by Mr. Mehdi bin Braham, an economist at the Ecole Supérieure in Tunisia. Mr. Mehdi.
So, hello everyone. I would like to thank the organizer of this webinar concerning this problematic and this big issue concerning extension of social coverage in the MENA region. So I will share my screen. So my presentation will try to briefly summarize the main issues behind this objective of improving the social security coverage in the MENA region. So I will try to speak about the general overview and the fact that the MENA countries constitute an heterogeneous group. After that, I will speak about the barriers which conduct to the slow coverage rate, the solutions, and after that I will try to give some conclusions and recommendations. So if there is one point gathering all the MENA region is the low level of social security coverage in our different countries. This is, if we want to analyze why we reached this situation, I think that there are different dimensions we have to treat. And one of the big point is the different socio-economic realities in our countries. So at first, we have to recall that we have different legislations in each country. Certain countries have no legislation concerning agriculture workers to cover this specific category. Certain country adopted recently the legislation to better cover the agriculture workers, like in Morocco, for example. And in other countries, you can find a good legislation, but you will have a huge gap between this legislation in theory and the application on the ground. So, like in Tunisia, for example. The second point deals with the socio-economic importance of agriculture sector in our countries, and I think that it depends on the countries, but we will have a contribution to GDP very different, like you see in this table, from country to another. It goes from 3 or 4% in Jordan to reach more than maybe near than 20% in Morocco. We have also this contribution to the employment, which is very different from a country to another. So we can speak about MENA countries, but we have to pay attention that there are a lot of differences between these countries. We cannot speak about social coverage without speaking about the gender issue, which is another pressing issue, since women represent a large portion of the agricultural workforce, and they are often underpaid and with lack access to leadership. And so this gender gap also extend to land ownership and, of course, access to credit. So we have very limited economic opportunities for women in the different countries. The migration issue is a very important point as well, since we are a region where we have a lot of flows of migration coming to the MENA region and going outside the MENA region. And this point is very important in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Tunisia now, in Morocco. So, and this migration is integrated very often in the agriculture sector. So they work without any rights, and very often they work for very low wages, sometimes lower than those paid for the people from the country. So it's a very important problem now, and we have to analyze carefully the situation of the different countries where migration is developed. The last point is the environment issue. I hesitated to put it in the common point in the different country or MENA countries because the lack of water is, I think, a big issue in the different countries. But I think that the situation is different from a country to another, so we have to integrate it in the different socioeconomic realities. So if we want to identify a little bit the barriers, I think that we need a multidimensional approach to better understand why the coverage or the social security coverage is low. The joint work made by FIO and ILO identify four dimensions, and here we have the economic, the legal, the administrative, and the awareness and the access to information. And like Leah and Shea said, the economic dimension is linked to the low ability to pay, which is linked itself to the low productivity, the fact that we are in very traditional agriculture sector, who work very often in a family context. So we have to insist on the fact that we very often we don't have really sector which is developed to give revenue to allow this worker to contribute to social security. The second point is the legal dimension, where we can see very often an inadequate or a non-existing legal system, where in Tunisia, for example, we have this like unfair competition between a contributory and non-contributory system, and we have a non-contributory program which gives more benefits than the contributory system. Then this is will conduct workers to go to move forward towards non-contributory schemes and leave the social security system, which is a big problem today in Tunisia, for example. And very often when the workers are poor, we have low level of benefits. So it's not an incentive to contribute. Uh, when, of course, you have people who have difficulty to to finish the or to face the daily problems, and when you come and you ask them to contribute and to benefit in 20 years of a pension, they don't give attention or pay attention to the system. Administrative questions are really a problem as well, since there are very often a complex legislation for people who are low educated, for people who are very often in very far away places in the rural areas. So this is one of the important barriers which explain why they don't contribute. And the last point is this question of awareness and access to information, where we have lack of interest in social security, a significant preference for the present, for people who are not rich and who are very big difficulty to live and who work in bad conditions, and the lack, of course, of knowledge of rights, sometimes explained by their low education level. So if we go to the solutions, I think that here we need as well a transversal approach where we cannot work on the economic dimension, only on economic dimension or legal, or if we work only on one of this dimension, we will not have any impact, I think, on the social security level in the MENA countries. I think that we need to work on the four dimensions together. And then we have, for example, in the economic side, we have to promote the value chain approach in order to improve productivity. We have to better valorize the product, control the distribution channels when it is possible. Then we can maybe improve the social security coverage, of course, by improving the benefits level, because the rationality or the economic rationality of these people is very strong, and they know very well if the benefits are not good, they will not pay anything. The second point is the legal dimension, where we have really to adapt the legislation to the specificity of agriculture working, including the fact that the work is there is a seasonality of the work, the legal status. Even agri workers are not an homogeneous group, because we have independent, we have people who work who are daily workers, so some other people are paid monthly. So we have different status, and we have to integrate and take into account this different status in the legislation. They change frequently of employers. There is, as I said, the frontier between contributory and non-contributory regime, which is not very clear. So very often people will go to the non-contributory programs instead of contributing to the social security. Concerning the administrative points, I think that we have to simplify as much as possible the procedures to integrate them in the formal sector, and taking into account their low education levels, the geographical remoteness, and the economic accessibility. In Tunisia, for example, sometimes the cost to go to the institution who is in charge of the social security will be higher than the contribution itself. So sometimes this is a big problem for...
Forgive me, Mehdi, for interrupting, but 2 more minutes?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So the last point is the information and awareness. I think that, and we conducted some regional consultations last month in Tunisia, and they confirmed that we need to replace the temporary awareness campaigns with regular support, and to not underestimate the economic rationality of agricultural workers or low-income workers. And we have to integrate unions and the structures at the local level to help into this regular campaigns. So to conclude, I think that we need to develop initiative for reflection and production of scientific works at the national and regional level. We need to create a dynamic of exchange between researchers in the MENA region. We started last summer with the conference in Jordan, and I think that it's a big, interesting point to develop this exchange. We need also to experiment with pilot projects with rigorous monitoring and evaluation to see what are the success stories in our different countries, and to try to share them and to customize them according to each country. And of course, I think that we have to give priority to agriculture, promote rural region and professions in the agriculture sector, since young people are going far away from this region. So we need to make some marketing or territorial marketing and business marketing to better valorize the different profession in this sector. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mehdi, for your insightful and valuable presentation. I am honored now to present the three main speakers for the discussion session, Mr. Mohamed Azhar, Director of Inspection and Control at the National Social Security Fund in Morocco, Mr. Mounir Cherif, a Senior Social Protection Consultant, and Mrs. Neda Nabi, Assistant Manager for Individual Accounts at the National Social Security Fund in Tunisia. The first question is related to the experience of Morocco and is addressed to Mr. Mohamed Azhar. Mr. Mohamed, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to multiple reforms in relation to social insurance in Morocco, including a new law for social insurance for the self-employed. The question is, what are the main factors in this new law, and what are the main challenges that you have faced in implementing this new law in the agricultural sector? The floor is yours, Mr. Mohamed. Thank you, Mrs. Dalia. Thank you, everyone, for this webinar. I'm honored and pleased to be with you today. And I hope that my contribution will be valuable and insightful and serve the success of your endeavors by sharing the experience of my country in terms of social insurance for the self-employed and those employed in the agricultural sector. I would like to say that following the COVID-19 pandemic, multiple reforms took place. Following the royal decree seeking to ensure universal protection for all through 3 stages. The first stage is to ensure universal coverage for everyone by 2022, which was successfully ended. The second phase also seeks to provide better family benefits by 2024. The third phase seeks to provide coverage, including the old age pension and more benefits. In particular, when it comes to the agricultural sector, I would like to say that the workers in this sector receive insurance since many years ago. They have the same benefits of workers in the private sector. This means that they receive the different services provided by the National Social Security Fund, such as health coverage, family benefits, and old age pension. They benefit from these benefits since 1981. However, those who are non-employed did not receive such benefits up until COVID-19, given that there is no legal text that covers this issue. However, during the pandemic, and to ensure better coverage for all, the state prepared an administrative framework that covers insurance and the old age pension to include all categories, including the non-employed and the agricultural sector. To implement these instructions, the state prepared a program that determines the type of social services and the time frame for implementation. In addition to the scale of contributions, it also determines a mediation entity between the Social Security Fund and the beneficiaries to ensure fast processes. In terms of numbers, up until today, we have more than 700,000 workers non-employed receiving the coverage and 400,000 employed workers, which amounts to 1.1 million beneficiaries of the social insurance following the new strategy. This is without forgetting another category in fishing, which has also been benefiting from the coverage, which account to 95,000 workers. When we talk about social insurance in the agricultural sector, we need to Recall that in Morocco, this sector has seen drastic changes over the past years, with the Green National Program set by the state between 2008 and 2018. This is a new strategy adopted by the state, which also achieved record numbers and had positive impacts on the workers in the sector. I will share with you a few numbers now. Parts of the accomplishments achieved. The net GDP of 2018 accounted to 195 billion, around 14 billion US dollars. The exports also increased with time, thanks to the strategy. More than 3,000 days of work were also created. The growth rate also reached 25% by 2018. The per capita income also reached around 1,100 US dollars. The percentage of fruit trees planted also increased throughout these years. These are accomplishments that have created a new middle income class, which is also a positive result of the work of the strategy. We also have a 2020-2030 Green Generation Initiative that is also based on some other accomplishments. This Green Generation Initiative also seeks to add a new social dimension to the strategy by putting the human capital as an integral part of the strategy. The state prepared different procedures to create a new generation of the middle class of agricultural workers, including the youth. A new generation of processes, a new generation of people, and it also enhanced the agriculture by value chains, by new techniques, etc. To wrap up, we can say that the Moroccan strategy for ensuring universal social protection was based on 4 dimensions. The first is the legal, by reforming the legal framework through the amendments of the old laws, which provided the comprehensive legal framework for all. Second, the economic dimension, through the different plans and strategies and initiatives that I previously mentioned. This is in addition to the benefits mentioned by Mr. Mehdi Ben Braham, such as the unemployment benefit, maternity and family benefits, a set of benefits provided by the Social Security Fund, which altogether can attract more people to pay their contributions. The state, furthermore, simplified the procedures and mainstreamed them. As an example, the administration of the Social Security Fund created more than 4,000 points, ensuring easier access to the services, and it also digitalized the services by creating different portals, such as the CNSS portal, which will allow beneficiaries to access the services without going in person to their different locations. The sound has become all of a sudden very low from the speaker.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mohammed. It is, of course, a very rich experience that we can go back to in our last question. But just a short summary, a conclusion before moving to the second question. I'd like to confirm what has been said by the colleague. Any strategy for the social protection and agriculture sector should be based on the legal dimension, economic dimension, benefits, and also mainstreaming the services and giving a higher quality of services. Thank you so much for this valuable input. Another question related to the experience of Tunisia, and it's addressed to Mr. Mounir Cherif and Mrs. Nadia Nabi. So Tunisia is known for the advance of social protection systems and the way these systems do cover women. So what are the factors that have contributed to achieving this relative success in Tunisia? And do you think that there is a sufficient protection for farmers and the workers in the agricultural sector? We start with Mrs. Nadia and then Mr. Mounir, because ladies first. Hello. When it comes to the Tunisian experience, in fact, the National Social Security Fund manages different systems targeted towards the workers in the agriculture sector. Ever since 1981, there was a social protection system for the farmers covering workers in the agriculture sector for a period of 45 days for 3 months. Those who are working for the same employer for 3 months. Amendments have been introduced in 1989 with an improved social protection system, including the workers working at the agricultural companies, as well as workers working for the agricultural producers employing 30 workers at least. The social coverage has included as well the work of non-workers in the agricultural sector, since a system was enacted in 1995, and the system includes every person that performs a certain self work or self-employment, and I mean by that farmers or livestock breeders, in order to extend the coverage of social protection so that they would include the vulnerable sectors and informal sectors, such as a social protection system for a number of limited revenues workers based on Law 32 for the year 2002, so dated the 12th of March 2002, including the small farmers occupying a space of 5 hectares, as well as the small livestock breeders. And also, this system has been extended to cover women and seasonal workers, as well as rural workers and workers in the agricultural sector, including women who are employed in this sector. And when we say seasonal workers and mobile workers, and also workers for one employer at an irregular basis and for a period of no less than 30 days, or workers for different employers. All the benefits are provided based on the specificity of every system, while taking into consideration the fact that the system should be adapted to the contributions of the workers while maintaining the financial balance. And we mean by that the treatment, medical services, also financial benefits whenever there are surgeries or operations, old age pension, also family allocations for those who are involved in the system, capital in case of death, compensation of any losses due to any accidents, and of course this would be obligatory for the workers and not obligatory for non-employees. And in fact, the social coverage is acceptable because it goes beyond the 87%. And in the agricultural sector employing a labor force, so then this rate goes beyond the 84%. However, in the ordinary agricultural sector, the rate does not go beyond 17%, since the agricultural sector is dominated by the informal sector, a parallel sector, and most of the employers ignore the social protection laws as a result of the difficulty to supervise or to avoid any additional financial burdens. And it should be noted that around 80% of the workers are not covered by the social protection systems. And the agricultural sector is characterized by a huge number of informal workers, which would make it complicated for them to be covered by the social protection systems. And so they are forced to go from one employer to another. And the female and male workers that are seasonal as well cannot be easily registered. And some of the workers are not well aware of the importance of being covered by the social protection system. So we have also the weak revenues and weak income. And so the contributions would constitute a financial burden for the workers. It should be noted that the women working in the agricultural sector, and despite or in fact, they suffer from a lack of coverage compared to men. So when it comes to small farmers, the rate of women benefiting from the social protection amounts to 10%, not to mention the difficulty of access in rural areas, the absence of any infrastructure to provide for the social services. In order to avoid these problems, an increased attention has been given by authorities to cover female workers in the agricultural sector within the social protection networks through creating the social protection system for female workers based on Decree number 4 for the year 2024. And the decree aims at helping this social category achieve the economic integration through giving the female worker sufficient and additional skills, and through facilitating their integration into the professional life, either in an independent work or work for an employer. And since women are very active and they can contribute fully to production and to economic integration. And so workers have been motivated to improve their livelihood and to improve their income. And this system would guarantee for the workers sick pensions as well as old age pension, as well as coverage against any occupational risks, not to mention safe transportation, since the agricultural female workers are provided with transportation, and the Social Protection Fund would cover some transportation costs while providing them with special vehicles. The women, female, or the female workers. Mrs. Nadia, I'm sorry. This is a lengthy intervention. Would you please summarize just a conclusion to give the floor to Mr. Mounir? So the social protection coverage rates are acceptable in Tunisia. And amongst the factors that have contributed to achieving these rates, so we have the political will, as Tunisia has adopted the social policies taking into consideration the main fundamental rights of all citizens, while focusing on integrating the vulnerable categories and motivating the informal sector to be covered by the social protection system. And also we have preventive measures. Also, there have been innovative initiatives such as the social protection system for the female agricultural workers, targeting the rural women while giving them a low-cost mechanism to be included within the social protection system. And also there was a national record for the agricultural workers, including demographic, health, educational, social, and economic data, not to mention the benefits within the framework of the social security system and benefits provided by the social funds within the framework of the social protection. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. You would have some room for additions in the upcoming question and also in the discussion. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I give the floor to Mr. Mounir. And please be brief. Mr. Mounir, microphone, please. Thank you. I'd like to thank the colleague Neda who talked about the social protection systems for the workers in agricultural sector in Tunisia. We have 4 systems that have been created ever since 1981 for the agricultural workers who work for 45 days in a row. And in 1982, a system has been created for the employers and agricultural producers. She talked about the 4 systems that currently exist, and there was a 5th system that was recently created a month ago for the female agricultural workers, given the road accidents that they are subject to and that have caused the death of a lot of women workers. There are 5 systems that take into consideration the specificities of all the categories of all the workers in the agricultural sector. It should be noted that these systems, in fact, are at a financial deficit. So the legislator and the state wanted to take into account the weak financial funding in this regard. Ever since these systems have been created in 1981, 1982, especially for the workers, these systems have been considered as a financial deficit. Of course, that there are benefits that are being provided with a lesser financial value than revenues. But despite it all, the real coverage is very weak, amounting to around 17 to 18% for the workers, and for the employers and the independent producers, it amounts to 47%. And we can say that it is way less than that because the 47% is related to the producers that are paying 1/3 amongst the 4 1/3 per year. But within 1 year, we may say that the rate of payment of contribution is very weak. What is the problematic, in fact? The problematic is related to the culture of social protection that is lacking. In fact, the media and the streamlining of the procedures, as well as the management procedures, they are all lacking. So in fact, overcoming obstacles and complications should be our obsession so that we would be able to get to integrating all of the categories of the agricultural sector within the social protection. Last but not least, the supervision. In fact, workers should be made aware of the importance of social protection. They should get integrated into the social protection, and they should be motivated to implement the law. Why is it that in European countries such as Italy, Spain, we don't find the workers that are not covered by the social protection? It's because we have the oversight and the supervision. And this is what we lack in Tunisia. We lack awareness, we lack media campaigns, we lack enhancing the culture of social protection, and we lack the oversight and supervision to make sure that these systems are well implemented. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mounir. A very good summary, an accurate summary. The last question is for the 3 of you, and I go back here to the main topic addressed by the series of webinars by the Arab Compass, which is the integrated methodology of the social protection. Based on your experiences, is there enough linkage between the social protection systems based on contribution by the beneficiaries and the social protection in general in agriculture? And what are the main lessons learned by the experiences of Tunisia and Morocco? We can follow the same order. We start with Mr. Mohamed. I couldn't hear the question, sorry. Could you please repeat the question? So based on your experience is there enough linkage between the social protection systems based on the contributions by beneficiaries and the social protection in general in agricultural sector? And what are the main lessons learned by Tunisia and Morocco? Okay, it's clear. As I've said, the benefits play a major role in convincing the beneficiaries to get covered by the social protection systems, because any worker that is made aware of the importance of social protection should be informed about the package of services. And we've worked on that a lot in social protection through the media and awareness campaigns that we have launched in Morocco in order to convince the people to be covered. Because as said by the colleague in Tunisia, the culture of social protection is a very limited one. And most of the people, most of the farmers and workers in the agriculture sector that we visit to make them aware are not well informed about the services that they can benefit from. So this is why there's a main pillar here related to the services or the package of services. This is a main pillar related to the mainstreaming of social protection in the agricultural sector. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mohamed. Mrs. Neda, go ahead. As I've said before, the multiplicity of the systems in Tunisia are based on a legal framework and a coverage system based on the capacities of the individuals. So the benefits are provided based on the specificity of every system, and the system here should be adapted to the capacity of contribution by the beneficiaries. So as I've said, there are many benefits provided based on the capacity of contributions by every individual. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Neda. Last but not least, Mr. Mounir. Thank you. Regarding the systems, as said by Mrs. Neda, the funding capacity has largely contributed to implementing these laws and to attracting people towards working in the sector. And I think that the rates of contributions are very weak, since these systems suffer from a structural deficit ever since they've been created. But despite it all, the main problematic is due to the fact that most of the workers in the agricultural sector ignore the existence even of the social protection systems. Hence the importance of raising awareness, having media campaigns, having briefings, and also establishing the social protection culture. And the lack of this culture is the main obstacle for improving the coverage. And then the oversight, as I've said, because you have the social evasion by the employer and by the worker. So if we work on raising awareness and on enhancing the culture of social protection and oversight, then I think that the social protection coverage can be improved. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mounir. And I would like to thank all the speakers in this session, and sorry for having to interrupt you. And now we may open the floor for discussion. We have around 30 minutes to answer any of the questions or any of the comments that are formulated within Zoom. Please write your questions and the comments so that we may be able to answer them. And we have Mrs. Nurjella Al-Haj, my colleague. She's a specialist in social protection in the FAO. She will be helping me to moderate the session and to read the questions that are asked. There's a question. I think it would be preferable to read it in English, just as it has been written, and the interpreters would be able to translate it into Arabic. So the question is as follows. She switches to English.
Would the National Authority for Social Insurance consider that contributions on an hourly wage, not on a monthly wage, be a viable solution to expand and target coverage for workers who do not usually meet some of the eligibility criteria and work in a more flexible fashion? For example, women, seasonal workers, emerging platform workers, etc. هل واضح السؤال؟
بالنسبة لي واضح.
Yes, clear to me. Go ahead, Mr. Mohammed. And I can read it once again to Mrs. Neda, to Mr. Mounir. Well, regarding contributions, we distinguish between two categories. We have the workers, whereby the contributions are prefixed based on the number of hectares of the owners. For example, those who have more than 5 hectares, so they would pay $12 per month in return for health services. Those who have more than 100 hectares, so they would pay around $60 to $70 per month. So this is regarding the workers. You've asked about the seasonal workers specifically. In Morocco, we do not rely on the monthly salary, but rather on the wage. Whether that worker has worked for 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 days, 7 days, 10 days. For us, the worker, or in fact, the employer should declare the wage earned by the worker, no matter what it is per month. This is my answer. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. In Tunisia, do you have any other system for the workers, for the daily workers, the seasonal workers, maybe hourly wage, Neda or Mr. Mounir? Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Mounir. No, go ahead, Mrs. Neda. Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Neda, and then we give the floor to Mr. Mounir. Regarding Tunisia, there are some complications to know about the real wage taken by the workers or employers. And in Tunisia, there's a basic calculation of benefits based on the minimum insured wage. For example, when it comes to the worker, it's calculated based on the specialization of a worker. It's multiplied by 1 to multiplied by 3 for the specialized worker. And regarding the employers or producers, there are 10 income segments, starting from the minimum wage multiplied by 10, being multiplied by 10. But regarding the system of 1989, when it comes to the structural companies, since the companies would resort to doctors, to engineers, etc., there is a specific administration. And there is a database of the different salaries. So, in fact, the salaries that are adopted for calculation are the real salaries and real wages that are taken by the workers with regards to this category of agricultural workers. Just a small addition in this regard, in this context. The contributions vary based on the social protection systems. So, for example, with regards to the agricultural social protection system, contributions amounted to 12.5%. Also, 57% for the employer, and the rate of contributions would amount to 19.7% or 12.45% for the employer and 6.75% for the employer. Or for the workers. So, yes, the rate here is 14.1. Just overview here. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mounir. There's another question as well. Just a small addition here. I think that the question here is whether there's a flexibility in contributions to provide social protection. I think that calculating the contributions or the working hours or working days would contribute to providing social protection, because in Morocco we have some workers working for 1 or 2 days with an employer, and then they would move to another employer, and then they might work with different employers within 1 month. So as an answer to the question, I think that this flexibility in the declaration and in the deduction of contributions would contribute to providing social protection for the workers inside of the agriculture sector.
Let's move now to the second question, which is written in the question and answer section, addressed to Mr. Mehdi. I will read it in English. You can listen to its translation into Arabic.
Mr. Braham, I trust you agree that there is an assumption that regulations outside of social protection, such as those regarding farm management or production or expected outcomes, impact the future. Therefore, many workers in the agriculture sector, especially the farmers, are divesting and even abandoning the sector as they feel that new regulations, bio-sustainability, eco-fertilizer, and climate change might require new investments or changes in how they manage production. تفضل السيد مهدي.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I'm totally agree, because big investments are needed today to modernize the sector. So if we want to reduce this uncertainty and to better valorize products, and I think that this question of uncertainty is very important, since incomes are already low, and in addition to that, they are uncertain. But this uncertainty is also linked to the environment issue and the lack of water. Since, for example, in Tunisia, and I think it's the same thing in the other countries, the irrigated perimeters are very limited. So the production is strongly linked, or depends on rainfall. So in Tunisia, for example, it increased the number of illegal wells, and then it's a very big issue. And here we need really a public policy to promote investments in the agriculture sector in order to reduce this uncertainty and to allow agricultors or agri-workers to increase their revenue. Because as I said, we can try to promote this tradition to contribute, and we can try to increase the control. But if we don't take into account the economic dimension, the fact, for example, in Tunisia, that the daily revenue is about $6, and you can do anything with $6 a day in Tunisia. So if we don't increase the revenue by increasing the productivity and to take into account the different dimensions in order to increase the social security coverage, we will stay with very low productivity and low revenue and precarious workers. And even if we will have a very good legal structures or context, we will not reach the same social security like, as I said, Mr. Mounir Cherif, in Europe, in Italy or Spain. They have good social coverage because they also have a modernized agriculture with high productivity and of course high revenue.
Thank you for the answer, Mrs. Mohammed, Mrs. Neda, or anyone else. Would you like to comment on this question? On the fact that farmers or agricultural workers are divesting from this sector or abandoning this sector, given the different regulations and given the instability in the sector. Do you have anything else to add on this point? If not, we can move to another question addressed to Mrs. Neda. If I may, Mrs. Dalia, I would like to say that in Morocco, there is an issue related to water. After years of drought, Morocco has adopted the National Plan for Water 2020-2050. This is a national plan to address these issues. The main point taken was desalination plants to use seawater in agriculture. This could be a different topic that can be addressed at a later stage, but it is of the utmost importance for the agricultural sector, and this is amongst the main challenges faced by Morocco. Thank you, Mohammed, and indeed, I agree with you that this is a topic that includes multiple details, which can be discussed later on. Another question addressed to Mrs. Neda.
Ms. Neda talked about the challenges with regards to registering seasonal laborers. What are the major obstacles and what could or is being done to increase their inclusion in social insurance? واضح السؤال سيدة نداء؟
سؤال واضح بالنسبة لي.
السؤال
It's clear for me, says Mr. Mohammed. Maybe we can give the floor to Mohammed to answer, and then we will go back to you, Mrs. Neda. Mr. Mohammed. For seasonal workers, in relation to registering them in the Social Security Fund, I would like to mention that we have enhanced the oversight and auditing system, which also organizes surprise field visits to ensure better oversight and control, and ensure at the same time the proper registration. These are different measures taken to limit vulnerability and to ensure that all laborers are registered, whether seasonal or not. The Social Security Fund organizes, as I said, these control and oversight campaigns to ensure the registration of all. Certainly, there is a parallel policy, which is the awareness-raising policy. Different awareness-raising campaigns are organized in the markets and the villages to raise awareness at the level of employers and workers on the importance of Social Security and registration. So these are the two facets of the measures taken to limit the lack of registration. I can also add that these awareness-raising campaigns are very important. They target the rural areas in particular on the importance of registration. Yes, we can hear you, Mrs. Neda. You can go on. Your mic is muted. I would like to talk more about the awareness raising sessions and campaigns, especially in the rural areas, on the importance of joining social protection schemes. At the same time, the registration process should be simplified. We're trying to make these services closer to the workers, especially in the rural areas. We are working on better coordination between the fund and the different other stakeholders to ensure comprehensive coverage and sharing knowledge and information between the different state institutions. This is the methodology adopted to ensure proper coverage, comprehensive coverage, especially in the rural areas. Thank you very much, Mrs. Neda. Mr. Mehdi, Mr. Mounir, if you have any comments, feel free to add them. If not, I will move to the other question.
Thank you for the insightful discussion. I wonder if you can talk about the presence of other benefits that agriculture workers may benefit from, like cash transfers or health benefits or food vouchers outside social insurance coverage. Those could be non-contributory social assistance schemes or could be other programs by other ministries, like the Ministry of Labor, for instance, in Egypt provides some benefits for irregular workers. Is this the case? Is it the case that if they contribute to social insurance, they will lose out on these benefits? Also, I guess the contribution figures mentioned in Morocco, $10 to $60 or $70 monthly as a contribution is quite expensive. Do we know the share of workers earning below these levels? أقرأ السؤال مرة أخرى ولا واضح؟
Should I read the question again or is it clear? Mr. Mehdi, I give you the floor to answer it first.
Yes, in Tunisia, since the COVID crisis, the government have chose to increase this non-contributory program size by increasing the number of beneficiaries and by increasing the benefit level. So today it became a problem because, as I said, this non-contributory pillar is giving more than the contributory one. So people and the public policy wanted to promote or to encourage people to go from non-contributory to contributory. We said from al-aman to al-dhaman. But it's the opposite effect that we are seeing now, because poor workers in the agriculture sectors have no capacity to contribute. And of course, when they will see that they can benefit from non-contributory programs, they will easily and very quickly choose these programs. And the legal context is also complicated, because when you are in the social security, you cannot benefit from non-contributory programs. And then you have to make a choice. The two benefits are a substitute. So we cannot benefit from non-contributory program and contribute to social security. We have to make a choice, and for poor people, this choice is very quickly made.
Thank you, Mr. Mehdi. Any other answers? Yes, this is Dalia, if I may. Mohamed says, there are no other benefits other than the official benefits in our case, especially for the salaried workers. However, for the non-salaried workers, those who don't own lands, in this case, there is a different type of support provided by the state, but it is conditional. conditional to settle their situation with the Social Security Fund. This means that any support as part of the agricultural sector cannot be granted without settling their status with the Social Security Fund. So it is a support, it is a type of benefit provided. We can say that support is provided based on the condition of settling their situation and status with the fund. And this is the case from our scenario. Thank you. Any other additions? Any other comments? Mrs. Neda, Mr. Mounir. Does the contribution to the Social Security scheme prevents the beneficiaries from receiving cash assistance or food supplies or food vouchers, etc.? Any comments on this point? For the women agricultural workers, they have the social safety program. They receive monthly cash assistance and cash transfers amounting to 240 dinars per month. The categories that are also poor can receive education grants, holidays grants, etc. Or health coverage for medical expenses, limited fees for medical expenses, and sometimes medical expenses are covered for them. It's called the Social Safety Program. Thank you very much, Mrs. Neda. Answering the second part on contributions for the non-salaried workers. As I said, the amount is determined according to the land used. If it's less than 5 hectares, the amount will be symbolic compared to the income received. For those using more than 100 hectares, which is a large area of land, the contribution will be $60. So it depends on the area, but at the same time, it's still symbolic. This is to say that the contribution is determined depending on the area of land used. And in all cases, I would like to remind that it's honestly a very symbolic amount.
Thank you, Mr. Mohamed. We move now to the last question in the chat box, and then we move to the closing remarks. So the question
based
is,
on the current situation with migrant workers, are there initiatives to improve coordination or funding at a regional level? يمكن السيد مهدي يكون أوقع
maybe Mr.
للرد
Mehdi
على هذا السؤال.
can answer this question.
أو منظمة العمل الدولية يعني.
Yes,
or maybe the
maybe I can
International
speak
Labour
about the Tunisian
Organization.
experience, since I know that a lot of work has been done in coordination with human rights institutions to try to integrate this migration, the people coming from Sub-Africa in at least the non-contributory pillar. So, but we are now speaking about how to finance this program and how to find solution at the middle and long term, because we can in the short run finance that with international cooperation, but I think that we need to find long-term solutions in order to finance that. And of course, I think that we need to think about how to integrate this population, which is not only in the agri sector, but on other sectors as well, into the formal sector in Tunisia. Because a lot of Tunisian people are leaving for Europe, and now we have a lot of jobs or a lot of firms who don't find anyone to work for specific jobs. So I think that this migration is replacing some Tunisians, and now we need to integrate them in the formal sector, which is, I think, a priority.
شكرا للسيد مهدي. تفضلي سيدة ليا.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Dalia.
Mehdi. Go ahead, Mr. Zia.
Here I mean, if you want to talk about the coordination when it comes to migrant workers, the main tool could be a bilateral agreement between countries that could include social security provisions or bilateral social security agreements. There are in North Africa a lot of bilateral agreements, but this will improve the coordination, or if you want to say the portability of benefits, that migrant workers would benefit from, their entitlements in other countries. However, as Mehdi said, this will require to start with that migrant workers are eligible to entitlements in the country of destination. And as Mehdi said, they tend to be in the informal sector. So this is an additional obstacle. So we are in a place where we have to talk more now at how to cover migrant workers, and later on we could talk more about the coordination and the portability of benefits. Thank you.
بالنسبة للمغرب إذا
Regarding Morocco, we have a lot of workers coming from sub-Saharan Africa in different sectors, especially in the agricultural sector. And here we can benefit from all of the services provided by the Social Security Fund, provided that the residency is legal in Morocco. So they can benefit from all the services just as all other Moroccan workers, provided that they are legally residing in the country. Regarding the migrant workers coming to the Northern African countries from Sub-Saharan Africa, they come in order to transit to Europe. Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco are transit countries. And if they work in the agricultural sector or in any other fields, so then this would be in order to get more funds, because that transit is costly and they'd have to pay a lot of funds for the owners of the ships so that they could be able to transit towards the European countries. But when it comes to Tunisians who work, especially in Italy, in fact, there is a bilateral convention between Tunisia and Italy, and they are covered by Social Security. The main problem is not related to the migrant Tunisians working in European countries, but the problem lies in how to cover for the highest possible number of workers in agricultural sector in Tunisia. This is the main problem. Thank you. Thank you. Any other additions? Great, then. I'd like to thank once again all of the speakers who are with us today. Your experiences are very important and the discussion was very rich. We move now to the closing remarks by Mr. Omar Benammour, who is an expert in social protection in the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Department of Rural Transformation and Gender Equality. Mr. Omar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dalia. Thank you to our distinguished speakers, discussants, and all participants for your valuable contributions for today's insightful discussion. So over the course of this session, we have examined the multifaceted challenges faced by agricultural workers in the MENA region, including the exclusion from social insurance schemes and the vulnerabilities arising from their working condition, climate change, but also from their socioeconomic and the socioeconomic and political context affecting the agricultural sector in the region. So as highlighted by our panel, the agriculture sector, which employs 18.7% of the workforce in 2019, is central to the regional economy, but remains highly informal and exposed to health, economic, environmental, and social risk. So despite this significance, agricultural workers, especially women, often remain among the most excluded from essential social protection services, such as pension, health insurance, maternity benefits, and protection against work-related injuries. So we are particularly grateful to Mr. Braham for presenting a general overview of the access to social insurance of agricultural workers in the MENA region, highlighting the remaining difference between legal coverage and effective coverage in the region, and the necessity to present integrated economic, legal, administrative, and information-related social solutions for all categories of workers in the sector, including for rural women and migrants. I'd like to thank also Mr. Azhar for sharing Morocco's experience with a new insurance legislation for self-employed agricultural workers. His insight into the law elements and implementation processes through the provision of greater incentive for enrollment as part of a wider strategy for creating a middle class in rural areas offer valuable lessons for other countries. During this webinar, Ms. Nabi also presentation on Tunisia Advanced Social Protection System, which develops specific solutions to successfully extend coverage to female agricultural workers, highlighted the importance of political will as well as the need to design adapted mechanism to the socio-economic characteristics of the population. It was very, very, very useful. To conclude, Mr. Cherif also provided an essential intervention related to the necessity to provide solutions for agricultural workers that are financially sustainable for the public budget, including by ensuring regular contribution to social insurance. For that, he also highlighted the need to promote a culture of social protection where information and oversight are both applied jointly. Today's discussion reaffirmed the critical need for robust and comprehensive social protection system, which consider both contributory and non-contributory schemes as part of a broader package of economic inclusion intervention to address poverty, inequality, and ensure a just transition for all in the agriculture sector. As demonstrated by the experience of Morocco and Tunisia, extending social insurance coverage is achievable despite remaining barriers. However, the dimension of uncertainty, which are economic or climate related, will have to be better considered in the future as economic means of agricultural workers to contribute to social insurance are closely linked to climate change. So making social insurance and social protection more broadly better adapted to climate change and establishing bridges, for example, with agriculture insurance could be potential solutions to explore in the future. So again, the MENA Policy Incubator launched in 2024 is a significant step toward overcoming all barriers of access as it provides a platform for policymakers, experts, and practitioners across the region to collaborate, share knowledge, and implement practical solutions for extending social insurance coverage to agricultural workers. This exchange of best practice offers valuable lessons for other countries and underscores the importance of contextual solutions. And as we conclude today's session, we recognize the importance of continued collaboration and knowledge sharing to develop and scale up necessary innovation to overcome barriers of access in the agriculture sector. So work of the MENA Policy Incubator will be pivotal in advancing this agenda, and we encourage all stakeholders, government, international organizations, and civil society to persist in this effort and join this incubator in the region, as well as to create similar platform of collaboration in other regions to build inclusive, equitable, and resilient social protection system for agricultural workers. So thank you once again to our esteemed speakers and all participants for your contribution. And we look forward to continue discussion and action that will lead to more inclusive social protection system in the MENA region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you. This is the end of our session. I'd like to thank all the speakers and all of the participants. I'd like to thank Greta Campora from the FAO as well as the working team from the ILO. I'd like to wish you a wonderful day. See you soon.